Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another fun-filled edition of Map Maven. My name is Ellen. I'm going to be your host, as always. I am not joined by a guest today, but we are doing something a little fun and different, as some of you might already notice over here in our screen share. We don't have our lovely dungeon draft up, but we'll get to that in a second. Welcome to Talking XP. This is, on this channel, we also stream a game called Raven Lost Misfits every Monday. I'm also a part of that, if you don't know. And yeah, other things to tell you about is we are sponsored by Roll20. We will not be using Roll20 today, but it is a great map making software for all of your uses. Oh my gosh, hello there. Yes, we are in Photoshop. Hi, Levi. Thank you for joining us. Yeah, we're going to be using Photoshop today, which we'll get more into in a second. I know, we're all very excited. So, other sponsor for today is Sirenscape, our lovely audio, ambiance, environmental sound program, which let's go ahead and take us off of this busy wharf. Let's step into the Map Maven's cartography shop, just so we can, take it away from all this chaos. And come on in, everybody. Oh, now we're just nice with the ruffling of the papers. Isn't that lovely? You can have those same abilities available to you if you use Sirenscape for yourself. And yeah, those are our two major sponsors for today. Another one I actually am going to call out, which is not an official sponsor, but is a fantastic program, is Star Raven from DeviantArt. They're an artist who released a calligraphy map making set that you're going to be seeing me using a lot of today. It's the calligraphy set I use for pretty much every single one of my maps I make on Photoshop. And I'm going to pull up their thing here so I can post it in the chat so all of you guys can see it. But they have a great stamp tool brush set that you should definitely check out if that's something you're interested in. It's pretty much what I use for all of my stuff. Let me get the link and I will share it momentarily. Copying URL. And here we go. There it is. It's in the chat. So if you go to that link, you'll be able to download the same brush tools that I am using today. Other than that, I am only using what is standard available on Photoshop with the addition of like 2 extra fonts that I just re-downloaded. But those fonts are available for free, which means you can do this too. You have the power to make your own worlds in Photoshop. I'm not an artist. I want to preface today's episode by saying I am not formally trained in this program. I am not an illustrator by trade. This is not a program I use professionally in any way, and I've never been trained to use it professionally. But that being said, I learned how to use it on my own, doing a couple tutorials and kind of just messing around with it. You can figure it out and you can make some really nice customizable maps. I know these programs can be a little bit intimidating because when you hear Photoshop or you hear Clip Studio or any of those other Procreate, any of those professional illustrating level programs, it seems like they're only meant for people who are trained to use them professionally. And while, yes, you can train and take a lot of classes to learn to use them on a professional level, being able to do the basics in these programs is not as difficult as you might assume. You can definitely learn how to do it. Yeah, so I say if you are nervous about using this program, I hope that today you'll get to see what I do and realize while it might seem complicated at the beginning, it's actually not so wild. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the maps I've made in Photoshop before, and also going to show you how I would go making a map. And I'm actually going to be using the map that I make today for one of my home games, because the world you see before you, the world of Tarami, this is my map actually. I built this map for one of my homebrew worlds. So it is, yeah, look at that. Lovely. It's got like 2 massive continents. It's got the southern wastes, the amorous wastes. Yeah, made all this in Photoshop and it took a long time. I'm not going to lie to y'all, okay? It was a lot of effort and a lot of work, but it's very cool. Now that I've done it once, I know the tips and tricks that I could make this again much more easily. Other than that, yeah, I'm just trying to think how to start today. So this is not a tutorial stream. It's more about just chatting it up and letting you see some process as we go and being creative together. But obviously, if you have any questions, feel free to shout them out in the chat, and I will explain what I am doing as I'm doing it. So, it's a little bit of a soft tutorial if you're interested in that sort of thing. Yeah, and I'm sure I'm going to do things very inefficiently a couple times because I am not professionally trained in Photoshop. So if you see me doing something in a weird, strange way, I apologize and maybe figure out a better way to do it. I will probably stumble a couple times myself as I'm going through this. But it's all about having fun, making maps, creating fun worlds. Yeah. So this is the large world map. When I make maps, I think that's a good place to start, is telling you how, when I think about maps, I kind of think of them in a couple different scales, sizing from top to bottom. So there's the overall world map. Levi, don't call the PSD cops on me. I don't want to go to PSD jail. It's just a bunch of like multi-layered, unnamed layers in Photoshop and just me because I'm doing it wrong. Yeah, so I work on maps on several different scales. This is what the largest scale map I would make. Outside of maybe trying to pay, and if I made a larger scale map than this, it would really just be several smaller maps of this scale that I piece together. For instance, this, as you can tell, is a segment of a world. It is not a full globe map because, quite frankly, most of the time you're not going to use that. I also like there being a little bit of mist on the edges of the world that the players might not quite know because the people don't really know what's beyond those borders on the edge of the map. But this is, I guess this would be a continental scale map, or, this is like the largest I would go. So it's going to show your whole continents. It's going to show your major bodies of water. It might show major rivers. It'll maybe label them. Yeah, this is your big overarching. This is just going to say the name. So here, these names you see in black right here, Serendita, that is the name of a nation in the world. And Clover is the capital city. So it might list the largest possible cities. What you might think of with this is like a globe. If you had a globe in your home, that's the scale we're working at. For reference, these hexes here are 100 miles across from flat edge to flat edge. And I work on that scale going down. So this would be my, I guess, 100 square hex scale or continental scale. I don't have an official name because I haven't thought about that. Yeah, so this is actually the first map I built for this world. The next step down is going to be your region-sized map, or a 10-mile hex size. So, we've jump cut. Where are we now? So this is actually just within that larger map we just saw. So you see that it says Serendita down here. So we've just jump cut into just about here. That's where we are. This one is the second scale down I would use because it gives you enough detail of the region in which your players are currently operating. Most likely whatever country they're beginning in, whatever, but it doesn't have to be by national borders. It could also be by environmental borders. Say there you have a very large desert that is hundreds of miles across. You might be working on a different scale. So here, those 100-mile hexes are still visible. You can see it as this larger hex, but this smaller hex, that's actually a 10-mile hex there. So you're starting to see things in a little bit more detail. This is the map you'd most likely use if you were trying to track out travel time between cities. Obviously here you're going to have not just the capital, but you're going to have more detailed smaller towns or smaller cities. You're going to have smaller bodies of water, smaller rivers, things and details you wouldn't see on like a globe style map. Trying to think of other things I would want to point out here. You'll notice here on these, there are some things that are numbered because there's a lot of text. You can start getting bogged down in a map. And when I look at a map, I want it to feel, I think some of the best design maps are theme park maps because it is not necessarily about scale so much as communicating information to the viewer. So if you ever look at a map of Disney World or Knott's Berry Farm or Six Flags or any of those, when you look at it, you can see which land everything is really clearly. But if you took like a ruler and tried to figure out the scale, it wouldn't make as much sense. Also, a lot of the major landmarks like Cinderella's castle or Sleeping Beauty's castle, or whichever castle you associate with your Disney, your personal Disney, it's way too big compared to the scale of the map, but it's created an icon, so it's a lot easier to see and recognize what you're looking at, which is something I love to do between both of my map sizes. So, you know, this river is not actually 10 miles wide. It wouldn't be that wide, but if it's any smaller, we can't really see what's going on. Obviously, that is not the scale of that city, but we wouldn't be able to see it otherwise. Same with some of these mountains. They might not be exactly to scale, but I wanted this mountain to be clear. And you'll see these smaller dots. There's a lot of settlements here, but I use the dots with numbers on smaller bodies of water or smaller places to show that this is a settlement, that may be a town that's not quite big enough to get the label of a city, but it's nice to remember that there's something there because otherwise it'd just be too bogged down with text. Personal preference. Yeah, and then the next smallest scale of map I would make in Photoshop is going to be your, I guess this would also be kind of I guess if we call this big one is like continent, this is country or region, and then this one would either be like region or local area. Like this is the map I'm going to be using for my towns actually and cities. I actually don't go much closer to this because I start struggling when I have to get on a granular level with a city. So this map I used this is within, again, our Serendita map. So if we just zoom in here, we're in Village, and if we zoom over here, this is the same area of that map. Redone, souped up, redesigned, so that you can see more detail in the immediate area. Now we're looking at these larger hexes are our 10-mile hex, and then each interior tiny hex is a 1-mile hex. So this is my scale for this. I determined by looking at pace travel, like a day's pace, essentially. This is from like the center of this map out to each side is about as far as a party moving at a normal speed in the system could travel. So for instance, I believe I actually was just using these maps for a game I run. And I had my players, they just set off down the crusted road toward Harmath's Cradle, and that is about a day's journey if you're moving at about 24 miles per day, which would be D&D system, rather than Pathfinder or another one. But that is a really good thing because if you're traveling more than a day's distance from the center of the map, you most likely are going to start running into encounters or things that might extend that time. So my logic was, even if my players decided, you know what, on the drop of a dime, we want to leave Village and we want to head south. Okay, this is a long bit of travel. I can probably buy myself a session before I need to have another map, just because most likely they're going to run into something or there's enough role play or descriptions to fill that time. Yeah, so on a meta level, it's not so much about the visuals in the map as like giving yourself a little bit of breathing room as the DM. Yeah, so this is that scale map that we're looking at. So things I'd like to point out here. So the name of this city, this would be a smaller city or a large town, would be called, this is Village Shire. So the actual area that comprises like the living area of Village Shire would be these areas with red, as well as people living essentially in the greater Village Shire area, which is everything out in like the fields around. There's a couple hunting outposts up in the hills and the forests. Yeah, so this is like the area of Village Shire. It's not necessarily like just the town itself, because I think this is more useful. I don't go any closer than this on my town scale maps. I never build maps well, never say never, but I don't typically build maps that are going to show you every single intersection, every road, every building in town, because that is a lot of work, in my opinion. And when I'm describing a town or city to my players, most likely the most I need to know about that city is just what area of town am I in? Am I near the docks? Am I near the main thoroughfare? How, like, what are the general spaces and boroughs of this town? So in that way, I don't really need to know exactly where every building is in there. But if I remember, if in a description I throw out, oh, the Guild Hall is in South Shore, it's really near like the center intersection of the Crusted Road, but it's on like the south side. It doesn't matter what buildings it's next to or between or exactly what cross street, but that will help me remember, oh, this cluster of buildings, anything I described to be in that area is pretty close. Yeah, so that's my argument. Obviously, you can do city scale maps. They're beautiful. I just find them very difficult to build, very time consuming, because then I actually have to start thinking about what buildings go where. And I haven't found a better shortcut than this. Yeah, and then to finish it off, the smallest scale map I would make is a battle map. So I would make my battle map that we're all familiar. It's got your 5-foot hex. It's got your individual area you're interacting with. Yeah. So those are the scales of map I make. These maps on Photoshop, they might take a little bit more time than a battle map, but these maps are buying you a lot more game time. For instance, I had a campaign start off in Willardshire. We just had our 8th session the other week, and it was the first time they left this area to go to Harmath's Cradle, because the full first arc of that game was set within the town of Willardshire and the surrounding mountains, and obviously the very ominous Keyhole Lake that sits at the middle of the city was a focal point. So this map took me a while to build, but I got 8 sessions of use out of it. And if any other player ever comes back here, or if they ever return here, I'm using it again. Or if another campaign I'm running Passage through Willardshire, I've already got this ready to go. Even if my battle maps might change because they're not encountering the same things. Yeah. So, goodness me, that's quite a bit of information. I think I've earned myself a sip of water, if you don't mind. Yeah, so what we're going to be doing today is actually talking about how I would build a map on this scale, because, as I said, my players from this campaign are moving on to a different area, a different region of this world. So yeah, we're actually going to be building another area of Serendita that they're heading to, which I'll tell you a little bit about Serendita as I'm building, but they have set off on the road. They've already actually passed through Harmath's Cradle, and they're heading on to Lakeland, which is the next, I would say, well, Willage is a large town. Lakeland is a small city. So they're going to be heading there to do some shipments and possibly see where their journey takes them next. So we're going to be building a local area map for Lakeland so that I can have that for the next, part of the adventure, and I can talk about how I do that. Yeah. I feel like I'm teaching a class and I need to be like, anyone, questions? Is there any questions from the class? Uh-oh. My fonts are missing. Apple Chancery. Manage. I think I already did this because I downloaded these fonts pre-stream, but I will figure that out. It is all right. Okay. So what we're going to do is I'm actually going to take this map and I'm going to duplicate it. File, save a copy. Let's just take this and we're going to call this Lakeland. And yes, that name is inspired. If you're from Florida, you might recognize it as the name of Lakeland, Florida, which is an area. But I just chose it because I like when things can have very literal names. I think things should have a mixture in fantasy worlds of very elegant names and also just what's here? Lake. There's a lot of lakes, so this is Lakeland. I think there's a healthy combination of those things in the real world. Ooh, look at all these maps I've built. Okay, it's opening up. And once that opens, we can close this village map PSD. It's going to take a second to load. There we go. Okay, so we'll close this guy. No, don't save changes. Okay, so let's just break down this file we've got here. Let's see what's going on in here so we can start figuring out how to take it apart and reconstruct it. Layers and forms and things are so important. Okay, so buildings. There's actually no buildings on this map. But we have a couple society labels. We have a couple city-based labels. So these things I might reorganize as we go on this one, but this is going to be all of our like labels for different locations, different roads, city symbols. Ooh, see, so this is all our roads, and then that like dense population wash we've got there. River labels. So this is going to be all our water and rivers. This mount. Let me go ahead and name that over here. The biggest recommendation I can have is always try and keep your labels organized, because it will get very hard to remember what things are if you just are rushing and slapping them in. That's one thing I'll say. While a battle map, I can rush and build something really quick. You do not want to be doing that to yourself on a Photoshop map, because you will lose track of where everything is, and that's going to make your life miserable. There's our mountain labels. Yeah, let's just get all our mountain labels off. So this is just everything apart from, I'll even get rid of the hex. My hex structures. Where's my other hex structure? I guess that would be under, 10-mile hex right there. Cartography, that's just the border lines. Oh, there we go. There's all the natural landmarks. All that's left is our little... Oh, and there's land is gone. So I think... Ooh. Okay, so there's my secret trick I'm going to teach you guys. So let me just get rid of all this. So my secret trick of how to build this is work smart as much as you can. I just took a screenshot of this larger map, and I plopped it in there and I traced over it, because I already did the work of building a much larger map. Why would I stress myself out by trying to like build it all from scratch again? And then instead of having to pick whole new icons for the mountains or whatever, I can just kind of fill them in as I see them. So we're going to do that again, but with the more appropriate region. So let's go ahead, and this is 1, 2, 3, 4, just about 5 hexes tall and wide. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on a Lakeland. And I feel like that, I like the idea of being able to possibly show that intersection there, but that might be a little, so if this is the center of it, I do feel like it might be a little bit off center. You know what I'm going to do on here? I'm actually going to go in and I'm going to turn off some labels, because I don't need to see the labels that's blocking all my nice topography. Let me see which one it is. Okay, so there's labels. Whoop, too many labels. I need my settlements back. There we go. Okay, so there's a couple gaps here where when I was drawing in the patterns, I didn't quite connect the roads, but that's fine. So I'm going to take a screenshot of this. Let's see, what scale do we want? Let's grab this guy. So I want about 5 up. I feel like the majority of the town is sitting in and among these lakes, because I imagine it's sort of like a floating city. Not floating necessarily, but it's a little bit bog. You know, everyone's up on these houses between all these different things. Sort of like a halfling Venice, if you will, but not so fancy. So let's say, I like the idea of getting this river in there. So probably from about here down. And that gets just about everything we want. Let's see what we do if we hit shift. So that's a perfect square, which we don't have to do a perfect square, but there's something nice about a perfect square. I don't think I want it to be square, because I kind of just want to see, I think that's all I want to see. Because So I would like to see that little river on the side there. I like seeing that intersection. I think I might actually make it, maybe bring it in a little bit. But let's go ahead and export just this part. Channel, no idea. Honestly, don't know what most of this means. That's okay. We're gonna see what happens when I save it, and that's where we're starting with. Document new. Didn't like when we did that, did it? Okay, so that did not help us. No. Okay. We gotta find the appropriate thing. Selection. Find layers, select and mask, modify, grow, similar, transform. See, the problem is I'm very used to doing screenshots on my Mac, but I do not have, this is an Android, not an Android, it's a PC, it's a home computer. So I am not as familiar with how to take a screenshot on here. There's gotta be a way to do this. Plugins, help window, plugins, video, export. I guess that's one way we could do it. So what if I'm gonna make a copy of this too. Save a copy. I'll just save that as a copy because we're just gonna delete it as soon as it comes up. And then I will open that up for us. To view. Go to okay. Opening that up, and then we'll just crop down the document. Ooh. Okay, so let's zoom in here. And we're going to take our selection tool. We want it from about here all the way down to, I think that is a good spot because then we get a little bit of the road, but we're not going too far south. And then I'm going to actually crop this down to our selection. And I'm going to export that as just a low PNG. I'll export that to my desktop later. And now we can go in and we should be able to upload that from my desktop to here. Okay, it's very small. Ooh, very pixelated. Okay, so one thing we're going to have to check here is making sure that our image is the right scale. That looks right about right to me. Our hexes, you'll see these hexes are lining up as about the same scale because otherwise it'll get a little bit wonky as we go. So that looks fine. Let's go back in and we can get rid of, we can turn that one off. We can slide this guy down so he's in the same place on our layers map. Cool. Okay. So this is what we're starting with. And then we're just going to go through and frankly kind of just color it in using the same tools we have. I will, yep, I'm going to get rid of this guy because I no longer need him. No, I don't want to save those changes. Great. So let's take a look. If we bring in our 10-mile hex, it's not in the same position. We could move it up and around if we wanted to, but I feel like it doesn't actually matter if the hexes match up with these previous hexes. So I think I'll just leave that as is. Oh, what am I trying to do? Sorry, Levi, I was trying to get a screenshot of this image, but I managed to just export it. And if that's what you're asking. But yeah, so just got this little thing to be working off of, and then we're going to go through and we're going to draw stuff in here. So we've got our hexes, which we will leave turned off for most of this, just so they're not getting in our way and us accidentally selecting them. Woo! So we can get rid of most of this. Let's see. But we're going to want to keep the layers because these layers have pre-programmed effects that I added on to make them the correct color. So for instance, these forests, I can just type with whatever or use the forest stamp to input whatever color I want it to be. And it will automatically change to green. So this is going to help us have some consistency in the design between the maps. But I am going to erase the contents just so we're not dealing with all of this. So let's go ahead and let's start with our mountains. Let me just get like a nice big, oop, too big. That'll make my computer chug along. And will you erase? I wonder why it's not erasing there. It's not locked. Oh, it's because I am, for some reason, selecting this little sliver. So let's deselect. Yeah, there we go. Because when you have something selected, it won't let you operate outside of that selection tool. So we're just gonna do that. We're gonna get rid of this mountain here. We probably won't actually have any mountains on this map because it is pretty flat. It's a flat region overall. I do want to crop this map down to right about there. And crop. Just so we're dealing with the correct size map. The loading bar is on the other side, but it is loading the crop. Perfect opportunity to drink some water. Nice. Then we're going to take our forest. We're definitely going to be using this tool because there is forested areas around Lakeland, but we are not going to be obviously using the old one. So let me get back to my eraser tool. Let me deselect. Why is that happening? Oh, there we go. Let me make this eraser a little bit bigger. There we go. Whee! Goodbye. Goodbye, trees. There we go. I don't know. I really wanted us to keep that. All these rivers, forest, mountain, we already did that. Grasslands. We're definitely going to have some grasslands. Cool. So I'm just going to go through and erase these. Nice. And salt flats. That's this down here. There was a special area that had some salt flats, which now would probably be maybe on the upper region of the map. Rivers. Get those. We don't need that big lake. We will need some lakes, but we will not need them that color. And yeah, so that's all our natural landmarks. So now I can show you what we can do now. Since we know that there are lakes here, we'll start off with some lakes. Why not? So we're going to go into our tool. We're going to select the appropriate brush. This is all my fun, lovely brushes I have. Look at this. Wrong scale. This is like a nice little tool for stamping out a couple houses. We don't need that right now. But yeah, so that's my cartography brushes, which we'll get more into as I start doing forests and stuff like that. But yeah, so let's go ahead and grab a nice, maybe like a nice round or a chisel brush. We don't need anything too complicated. That's too small. That one's too small, but we can make it bigger. And I think we can just take this, make it like that. And we're just going to start coloring these in. Doo-doo-doo. You know what would actually be easier? Let's do a quick trick. Undo brush tool. We are going to take this and we are going to select by the color we're using to get the rough shapes in first. So we're going to go over here. For some reason, this little window is popping up off of my map. But we're going to select all our blue stuff. Control, shifting, getting in just as much of this. Let's go ahead and actually get our this guy. Make it a little bit bigger. We can just select everything that's blue. As much as we can select all of these blue. And then let's deselect. Don't want any of that. It's taking a second to load. Let's actually go ahead and I'm going to close this larger map so that, no, don't save any changes, so that we're not using so much of the computer's energy, because it's going to get a little heavy. Selection box is unhappy with me. You know what? It's very unhappy with me. But let's go ahead and do that, and then we're going to move back to our lake layer, and then I'm just going to take our brush tool, make it bigger, and then there we go. I wonder if that's white. There we go. Fill that in white. And I'll show you actually, since this one doesn't have the color overlay on it, I can show you how to add a color overlay. So just basically we're going to fill that whole thing in. Then we're going to go here, right click it, or no, actually we're going to go there and hit FX, color overlay. That'll pop up this window. And then we can change, you can see it's changing there. I kind of want it to match this color that I already had on the map. So I think I'm going to color pick from there. Make it a little bit more blue. Nice. There we go. So then if we deselect that, we can go in and start refining this shape. Since it got a little bit wonky, we definitely don't want our eraser that big. And I think I'm going to lower, just so I can see what I'm doing, I'm going to take this and I'm going to lower the opacity of it so I can see the lake, the thing that we're tracing over the top of there. Let me zoom in and make the eraser a little bit bigger. It's just getting rid of some of those hard edges we see, because they would look a little wonky if it was that sharp. It's a lake. It should be nice and soft. We do want some of these weird ripples because I think that also makes it more natural. Don't be too particular about it, because you can actually go through and leaving those strange rivets and ripples in the design will make it look a little bit more natural if it's not perfectly smooth. Yeah. Go through that, carving away. You see these bevels, that's another effect. It's similar to the color overlay effect. Now, one thing that's cool is as I go through, I'm kind of interpreting my previous map. So on my previous map, you can even see there's these little areas here that are a little bit paler. And now in the original map, that just might just be because it was a little bit pixelated. It wasn't fully filled in. But now that I'm seeing them, I kind of like the idea of there being little islands in these areas. So I'm going to carve those out of my water. Long one there, another one there. Maybe this one's a little bit of a peninsula because it comes in from the side. It's very satisfying to see the water kind of get carved away like that. There we go. Of a sharp edge. I can always go back and add more in if I cut away too much. It's a beautiful thing about Photoshop. It, you know, because it's digital, you can keep going back in and re-adding stuff or removing stuff, and as you go, and there's no final decisions unless you have a timeline you're working with. Very nice. Fill that one in a little bit more. Let's see. I'm gonna fill this one in. And you know, honestly, even though I have a separate layer I can use for my rivers, I think I'm actually going to try to use all one thing because there doesn't seem to be too much of a reason to keep them separated. So let's go ahead and just carve them in, especially since this is such a swampy area we're in. We want those things to be pretty prevalent throughout. We don't want it to constantly be switching. That might get too complicated to manage. It's a case by case basis. There might be other times it's easier for me to keep the rivers and lakes separate. In this particular case, I want to keep them on the same layer. Yeah, that's nice. Okay, that looks pretty good. Let's go over here and keep filling in. Got this river that carves up that way. So I'll actually make this. So now, I will say that now we're in this kind of shape. I want to use a different style brush because I don't want it to just have a flat circular shape. I want it to be a little bit more interesting. So we're going to take this chisel styled brush. Let me make that bigger. And we're going to make that, let's make it even bigger than that. Like this. And that'll get some nice curvature to it, which the river itself wouldn't have that extreme of a curvature, but it helps make it look a little bit more natural, in my opinion. I think we can go thicker. Let's make that a nice let's do like right about there. That's nice. We'll have to keep carving that in. Nice. Just gives the river a nice little ripple. We'll go in and fix that area that got too thin. And then we'll make this one a little bit thinner since it seems like it's a thinner river. Maybe right around 100. We're going to take this and carve it up this way. Yeah, and if any places start to get too thin, you can always undo it. But I also like it because it nicely tapers your river right at the end. So let's thicken this bit out. And then I'm going to take that one, make it a little bit thicker there. Yeah. One thing that's nice about naturalistic, when you're trying to make a map of a natural area or a natural shape, just ride with the mistakes that happen because it might be, oh, there's an odd little bump or jut. This is very square, but I kind of like the idea it looks a little bit square. It makes it interesting. And there are oddities all over nature. So why not enjoy them? So we're going to actually flip the angle on this. So this is how you change the rotation. So you see like over here, it's pointing that way. That's the angle of the brush. So I'm going to take it and I'm going to put it back up to 170, not 17,000. My goodness. And we're going to take it here to fill in that area. Nice. Okay. Let's zoom out, see if we got all of our rivers covered. I think that was all of them. Yeah, I think it is. And I think that's a decent amount of water to be getting on with too. Let's check our scale. Let's bring back in our hexes here. So if we got our little, this is actually a 1 mile hex, not a 10-mile hex. It's mislabeled from the other map. So let me go right there and I'll fix it here too so I'm not mad at myself later. So yeah, this island here, or is it an island or is it an area? It's kind of debatable whether it's an island or just a section surrounded by a couple rivers. This is about 4 miles this way, 6 miles this way. So that's a good little chunk of area. I feel like that's a nice area for a part or region of this city to be in because this is a larger city. This city is going to have a bigger metropolitan area. It's going to have boroughs. So maybe like this island is a borough, this island is a different borough. I think that's really fun and fascinating. And already here, I'm getting so inspired for building out this city, which I haven't built too much about Lakeland. So because I like building the lore of a city as I'm mapping it, I like the idea and the implication that's happening because of the map. This major road that cuts through Lakeland all the way from here out down to here, it doesn't touch this island. what does that say about maybe the people who have to live there or the culture there? Does that mean they didn't want the road going through there? Or are they maybe a little jilted by the fact the road doesn't connect there? Maybe this little spit of land here was actually built by the citizens to try and connect to the road up there, and this is the only point where it touches the road, and it's a very small intersection off that main road. That's interesting. I think that's going to be fun to play with. Okay. So that's our waterways. Let's see what we want to do next. We'll take that off. We'll also go ahead and, the other thing we can look at is as you go, you can also add, I don't think I really added other map. I did add a couple rivers here on my other, on my village map. Maybe I will pull that up real quick. Let me see what we're working with here. Yeah, let me bring that back up just so I can reference it as we go, just to see what I'm trying to map. Village map PSD. Taking a second to load. Okay, yeah, so I did add a couple rivers on here from what was on the main map, so we can also do that, which I think makes sense given the fact this is a waterway. A very water-based metropolitan area. Oop, there we go. There we go. But I'll mess with that in a bit. I don't want to start futzing around with adding stuff until we have the things we know are going to be there. That being said, there's not much to add geographically other than the forests and the road and this grassy area. So maybe I should start messing with the rivers here, because the rivers are going to shape that vegetation more than the other way around, right? Like if there is a forest on one side of the river didn't go there because the forest was there. The forest stopped growing because of where the river was. So I think we will go ahead and add some rivers in here. Let me take a look. Because on this map before there was this, but there wasn't all of these. Let me look at this one too. Because we have, let me zoom out. Got this enormous lake there. I'm just trying to think. I think there'd be a lot of different waterways kind of sprawling out for this area. But I do think that only the major river here is the only one that connects or transfers to a different area. Because if there were any bigger maps here, any bigger rivers that were connecting off to different areas of the map, they would be visible on this scale map. So let's just add in some smaller waterways and rivers to mess with. So let's go back to our river thing and let's take it back down to, I think 100 is a good scale, but maybe we'll take it. Oop, gotta be on the right place to add it. Gotta go back down to our lakes. I think that's too big. Let's go ahead and get rid of that and let's put it at 75. And let's start carving. Now, we know water is running upstream this way. So stuff would be coming out of these lakes. I like the idea of maybe there's one over here, extending off at the tip this way. I'm just going to mark these now. I'm not going to do them all because that's not quite natural yet. The idea of there one maybe there. Maybe there's not one off of that. There probably would be a couple rivers cutting through these islands, but those might even be smaller. I like the idea of there being one here. Maybe. I feel like there should be one coming off of down here since there's like a build up. Maybe flowing this way since we don't really have too many others flowing that way. And then let's have a couple flowing off of this. I don't know too much about geography, but you can kind of mess with it as you go. Because your players might not know. I don't play with too many geologists personally, or cartographers who actually know this sort of information. So if you're winging it a little bit, fudging the laws of physics a little bit, who cares? It's fine. Yeah, I think there should be more, because if it's flowing in here, I imagine maybe this area it wouldn't break too much, but once we start getting around to this area, I feel like there should definitely be some little streams running this way. I don't like the idea of it connecting like that. Maybe it goes more like that. I like that. Maybe a different one heading off this way. Maybe it reconnects over there. That's cool. Maybe that one goes that way. Yeah, I just like the idea of there being like some connected areas and all the water's kind of flowing out from here. Maybe there. But maybe this one also branches this way. Just causing little ribbons of water shooting off in every direction. And we're probably going to have these intersect outside of the bounds of the city too. There being maybe one there. No, not quite there. Let's have it come over this way so it's cutting across more of that island. That's an odd flow pattern though. I don't know if that makes sense, because if the water's flowing this way, it seems more likely, yeah, that makes more sense to me. Maybe another one right here. That one's flowing in there. Yeah, and we'll start futzing with these exact shapes now that we have a little bit more loosey-goosey. I do think this little bend in the river, there'd probably be another one cutting off from here because it's flowing in this way and it's hitting a hard wall. So maybe there's a little stream moving that way. Yeah, and this is all feeding the fertile plant land around. Okay, I think that's a start. Let's add another one here. But let's start shaping them a little bit better. So I think this river would actually be quite like a larger tributary. So let's have that cut this way. Which way do I want it to go? Maybe it kind of goes, and I don't think it would make it all the way to the road, but maybe it's a separate tributary for this lake, but it's a smaller one. Did it redo? Deleted one by accident. So we're coming on here, and then let's see. And maybe does a gentle swoop and also feeds in there, and then we'll thicken this bit up. I also like the idea of these rivers being here because it kind of creates a natural sense of sections within this city. Okay, let's go in with a little eraser tool and we're gonna erase some of these rivers. We know where they're originating from, but not necessarily where they're going. I really do love keeping my brush just small enough that it's frustrating to work with. Bad habits. There we go. So let's just leave little nibbins of river here that we can work with. And then we'll go back on and extend them. Let me make that bigger. And also, why not zoom in? Why not zoom in on my map? Why wouldn't I want to make my life easier? That's a secret. I always want to make my life harder. There we go. So we got these. I really like that too because that creates a little natural border there. I think these rivers will probably end up being a lot smaller. Remember that there's an intersection there. That one. Okay. So now that we have our little nubs of where these rivers are going, let's go and actually start making some decisions. So I liked this one carving off this area. I don't know. I think that makes sense if it kind of going off that way. Maybe it's quite thin. There we go. Just carving that in as we go. Maybe there's some ridgeway. Oh, well, there's the border of this forest here, so maybe that's that. And then this one flows up into this forest. So I like the idea of it getting a little bit windy because it's an old river. That's one thing I learned that I thought was very fun for a map making, from a map making perspective, is whenever you look at a map, or whenever you look at whenever you look at a map of a waterway, and if the river is straight on the map, you know, it has a very direct line across the map, that means that the river is probably a little bit more fast flowing, probably a little bit younger as well, because it hasn't had as much time to carve out the area around it into you know, eroding it into a more specific path. But if a river is extremely windy on the map, that means it's more likely a very old river, because it's been carving out that path for so much longer that it started to like bend the landscape around it. I thought that was cool. I thought that was a cool factoid. But, you know, don't quote me on it because maybe I'm wrong. Let's go ahead and that little connector I think is fine just as it was. I think this one, kind of want this angle a little bit more up. Let's maybe this one bows out. Yeah, let's get rid of that. And let's say this one actually bows out quite a bit. So it comes all the way up there and then it maybe comes back down. A little shape like that. We'll erase that little nub there. And then when we have this one coming up, so this one actually extends from that curve in the river. I don't want it to be quite such a perfect S shape. Like that. Don't like that either. I think that one I'm going to do with a slightly smaller brush. So I'll come back to that one. This one I like the idea of maybe... What about for this? Let's have this one do like a really wide... Maybe one of these. I think I'm going to have this guy do like a really wide arc. Comes all the way out here, kind of following that tree line a little bit. And then it comes back in. So it sort of cycles off that whole area. And then we'll keep this one. And it'll go like that. That's an interesting shape. And I like it. This one gonna carve off this way. Maybe that one starts heading back out. It seems a little big, honestly. Maybe it just droops. Droops and curves. And we'll take this one. I like the idea of maybe this one makes its way out to the road. And that's what the road is sort of following. And then it trickles off. A little bit too dramatic of a trickle off in my opinion. Oh, because you know what it is? Maybe these two join together. There's a big intersection of the water right about here. So they flow this way and they intersect right there. Bam. So it's a much thicker river heading this way. A little bit thicker, a little bit faster flowing. But it doesn't make it all the way to that intersection. So let's erase there. And let's make it a little bit bigger since this is a larger river, we've said. Ooh, we increase the size of our eraser, not the size of our brush. So that intersection is going to get bigger. Yeah, it carves off and maybe back around this way. I like that. Let's go back down to our smaller size brush. so we're not having it be too big heading off the side here. This one I think is pretty fast flowing for a bit, and then it starts to just trickle, trickle, trickle like that. Maybe this one actually intersects with the main river there. That's a nice little curvature. It also shows that there's maybe like a nice down, lower altitude land this way. Maybe not. Maybe not. I'll keep going and then we'll mess with it as we go. Like the idea of that one flowing to right there. Nice. We have this one. So these I think are even thinner rivers. So I'm going to take these down to about 50. The ones within the actual borders of these little islands here. Just so they're not taking up too much room. There we go. Curves around something there. We had another one right here. Nice. Oh, and there was one down here too. So let's take that back up to 70. Maybe once. There we go. Nice tributary. You know, most likely a lot of these rivers would actually be flowing inland. Because if it's a lakeland area, if it's a lake swamp area, it's going to be a lowland. So honestly, a lot of this would probably be flowing in from both directions rather than flowing away. I'll have to figure out exactly how I want that geography to work before I start actually running scenes in this city, because I think that makes a difference. It makes a difference to me, but it might not make a difference to you, and that's okay. Everyone has different priorities on maps and on world building. Because the other thing about world building is it's supposed to be fun. Like that's the DM's little treat of what they get to do. So if you're not enjoying doing it, don't build it. Just don't do it. The players probably won't care. Because they're off having their part of the fun by being the characters. So if you don't enjoy building a map of your city, like I don't build a map of the city. If you don't enjoy building maps at all, don't build maps at all. I don't know why you're here if you don't like building maps. Maybe you just like other people building maps. Okay, that looks like a really weird network, and I like it. I like it a lot. Let me see what it looks like without this background image on it. And also let me go ahead and bring this opacity back up to 100. Ooh, I like that. Let's get rid of this. Let's bring back in our land. I quite like that. I don't know where this little black dot is. It must be on one of our... Oh yeah, it's on our mountains. Let's get rid of it. Doop. Goodbye. I like this a lot. It kind of implies there's like a high ridge here, maybe. Does that make sense? Let's see if that makes sense. Well, there's another river on that side. Oh, maybe it's flowing up from that direction. So maybe it does connect there. So let's bring that back in. So it does connect here. I shouldn't have been cowardly. I should have let it go across the road. Let's redo this little section. It's enormous. What am I talking about? Let's go to our lakes. And let's go ahead and erase all of it. All of it. But it's okay. It's okay to erase it. Let's go ahead. As one of my favorite little streams I watch often says, delete your art. Because you can just make it again. Might take a long time, but you can always just make it again. So we're going to have that cross the river, and then this one. Which, you know what? For the sake of logic, I'm going to redo that too. Because if it's crossing the road, I would imagine the smaller tributary river would cross the road, and the bigger one would be the one they didn't want to build across. So let's say this one is going to be quite thin, or thinner, and then this one's going to be a little bit wider all the way down. We'll widen that out, widen it out. And then this one we're going to make huge. We'll scroll over, increase the size of that brush. Imagine if you actually had to have physical brushes, different physical brushes for everything you did in Photoshop. That's nice. That's what we wanted. That's what we wanted all along. We just didn't know. We didn't know yet, and that's okay. It's all about figuring it out as you go. We're going to make this a little bit wider here, so it doesn't just get big out of nowhere. And then have this tributary coming in. And for every river we add in, we're going to make it a little bit bigger, because that's how rivers work. As more water adds into them, they get a little bit bigger. And then we'll know that this river goes and connects to the river we know is on the other map, which we can go glance at that right now again. Because we've got this river here, so it actually cheats into this on that side of the water. Great. So in reality, this river that is a distance from that road on this larger map, it will be closer. Let's zoom out and get rid of this. I think that looks awesome. I'm very happy with that. Chaotic sort of spider webbing of rivers all over the place. Okay. One thing I want to show you how to do, even though this is a lowland. Let me see if it would make sense to include some sort of like hills. I guess maybe up here there'd be some hills, because there's some hills kind of around there, the salt flats there. So maybe we'll put a little hill up here just for a little bit of the effect. Let's drop that guy back in, because I want to show you how I do my mountains, which is not too complicated. We're going to go down, and this is also a nice opportunity to show off Star Raven's amazing brush pack. They've got trees, they've got all these different things, hills. Okay, we're going to be going for these hills. We're going to make them a lot bigger. Something like that. Now these are, let's go ahead and add our color overlay on these. Cover overlay. Let's just make them black. Okay, there we go. Now I don't want them that big. Let's take a look at how big these ones are. Let's scale these down to match. A little bit bigger, probably somewhere around like 1,000. Ooh, not even. I'm just missing it. Let me just, you know what, it's easy. Let's just type it. Yeah, that's about right. I'll take it down to like 900. 800. Yeah, that's about right. Okay, so we know these are going to be at about scale 800. I'm not going to put one right there, and I probably am not going to use this shape. I'm probably going to use one of the other one of the other hill shapes that we have. Let's take a look at them. So they got nice tiny hills, we got flat hills, and you can see them up here when I click them, so that might make it a little easier. This just seems a little bit many, but I kind of like these ones, these sort of shifting dune looking shapes. So I'll do some of those. Let's put these back up to, our magic number is 800. Yeah, and I think there'll probably be a couple of these up here on the northern side of the map. But they would, oh, you know what we did? We did all that work, and it's on the eraser tool. Whoops. So we'll have to go ahead and go back to the brush tool. This will not be devastatingly difficult. It'll be pretty easy. I liked that one. We're going to put it up to 800. Not 880. That's too much. There we go. Just like that. That looks nice. So we're going to put some of these sweeping dunes through here. You got to play a little bit around with where you want them. Control Z to get, wait, yeah. Okay, so let's kind of bring them in from off of the map. Let's say they don't run too far in there. They're really just right about there. Maybe we got one that's too far off screen. Maybe one right there as well. No, let's bring it in. Right there. So the road is carving through those dunes in the direction of this. Yeah, that looks nice. And that's really all I do on that. Now, if I was going to do a larger hill, so let's take let's say we're going to put a mountain in here. Now, this brush pack was built at a certain pixel scale, right? You can see I'm having to go pretty large to get them visible just because of the size and scale of this map I'm building. Now, one thing you're going to notice is as you go in building a map, which you can just also make it at a smaller scale and make your life easier, it's blurry. That's unfortunate. Now, I want them to look crisp. So what I might do is I'll go back up and grab our chisel tool or whatever brush makes sense. And I'll just go in and paint along the lines that way so that it fills in and looks a little bit crisper, which that takes a little bit of effort. But I like it. I do it because it works for me, and it doesn't take as long. It doesn't take too long to do that once you put the maps. Also, there's very few large maps I'll use. Oh, my phone died for some reason. Interesting. I apologize if you say something in chat right now. I can't see what it says because I usually monitor the chat on my phone. But yeah, so I'd go in and I'd just shape up the size of this mountain with another brush tool that does have a crisp edge on it until it looks how I like. And I can also, one thing that's nice about that is I can also shape it. So say I like the shape of this mountain, but I want this ridge to be even more extreme. That doesn't even make much sense, but it looks like Pride Rock. I could do that, and it's an easy way to modify the shape of the mountain without having to build the whole thing from scratch. Let's go ahead and change this back to a normal eraser tool. We're going to erase that little mountain, just leveling the earth like the gods that we are. Yeah, I think that's nice. I don't want too many dunes or anything here because, as we said, this is a lowlands. I might put something... Let's take a look at our larger map. There's mountains off this way. This is actually a raised area. This lake in the lore of the world is actually not creating water, but it's like an over energetic spring. So water is bursting out of it. So water is actually pouring out of it towards these other regions. So maybe there's a bit of an indication of a higher ground here, though not mountain. So I'll maybe go in here and add some down that way. Let me take a look at this too. Okay. Yeah, maybe I'll add some ridges up in the forest, but it's also a big old forest, so I don't know if it needs it. Let me go ahead and I'll add one because I had the instinct, so why not? I kind of want to do a slightly larger hill. Maybe it's not necessarily a mountain, but a recognizable hill in the distance. Ooh, sharp hills. Let's see how those work. They might look a little too severe for the environment. They don't look too bad. They look kind of like a mountain ridge, which I think I'm okay with because this isn't, this isn't a mountain in this area. It's just some rocky ground. So let's go ahead and get rid of that. What about one of these? It's like a hill, group of hills. These are like my big mountains I use. Yeah, I think I'm going to go with You know what, I might do this one actually, which I know you guys can't quite see it yet. I'm about to make it bigger so you can. Uh-oh, I made a mistake. There we go. I'm gonna take this and I think I'm gonna just put it, I think I'm gonna even make it a little bit larger. Let's take it up to, how's it look there? Yeah, I like it. I'm gonna put this and I'm gonna put it a little, I think right about there. And I did it on my eraser tool again. Womp womp, that's okay. It's easy enough to fix. Take that one, scale it up to 1. There we go. I'm gonna put it right in the corner of my map here. Now, I don't want it that tall, so what I'm gonna do is use my other brush, my chisel tool. And actually first let me grab my eraser and let's take it away from an eraser shaped like a mountain. And I'm gonna get rid of these guys. I'm just gonna cut it down and I'm gonna adapt this mountain range to look how I want it to look. So I like the shape of these. I'll also go ahead and zoom in since we're right here. Let's also change the angle of this. You know, I think I do like the idea of maybe doing it with just my round marker, my round pen tool. Oop. Guess what I was doing? Putting it on the eraser. Every time, that's all right. You know, this is why we do it, right? This is why we love making maps. I did it again. I can't believe I did it again. How did I do it again? Oh, because we clicked eraser tool. We got to go back up to the top and actually grab one of our hard round brushes. See, here we go. There we are. That looks better. Filling it in like that. Just getting rid of that rough edge. Filling it in. Just carving down the side here. Nice. Up here for this littler one. Now we do want some sharp points on our mountain, so I probably will go back with an eraser tool to make them more in the shape that I want. Let's back out and see how this looks. Because my instinct is that we're going to need something else here. So I might take our Sharp Hills tool, our Sharp Hills brush, this guy. Maybe add him in here. But maybe at a bit of an angle. We can also angle these brushes by going like that. That's not so bad. You know what? Actually, I don't like that. So we're going to take that back. We're going to add it like this. And then we're going to take our eraser brush, get rid of some of this interior here. And then shape that out. And I think I'm also going to take one of my smaller hills, zooming down. Sharp Hills, Sharp Hills. Let's take this one, make that bigger, a little bit bigger. Maybe add it like here. Eraser tool. Darn you, eraser tool. We're going to take it up to just right around there. And then we're just going to go back in with our brush tool and start chiseling that up, shaping it up to make it look nice and pretty. Just like that. And it looks a little bit bulbous right now, but we're just trying to roughen the shapes, and then we can make them look nice and sharp and crisp afterwards. Because again, these aren't mountains. If they were mountains, we would have been able to see them on the, I would have made them be larger on the other map we had. So these are just more like rough hills. Probably pretty shallow. Let's go ahead and take these with our eraser tool. Let's grab a chisel. Let's grab this guy. Make him a lot bigger. Maybe a slightly different angle. Do not like the cut of that. Let's try the other one again and adjust another setting. Let's try turning it the other way. There we go. Shaving away. Nice. There we go. That's the angles we wanted. It's interesting that there's this little bit of bleed here. It's got to be with the brush design. Probably be less noticeable if the brush wasn't so big. Take that down to maybe 80 so we can get in some of these cracks. There we go. Take this one and carve it down. Nice. Nice. I'm just going to be saying nice, nice, nice over and over again for a minute here. Just futzing around. This is why I say maps on Photoshop you want to give yourself. I'm actually just going to cut that whole bit off because we don't need it. Because you can futz endlessly with them, which you can do that on a battle map too, but I feel like on Photoshop I'm so much more prone to really messing around and cleaning them up and zooming in and trying to get all the exact little details clean as I want them to be. So I don't want to ever be rushing while I'm doing this map, because this is much more of a painting thing, and paintings take time. You know, I'm most likely not even going to finish this map today. Really what I'm hoping to show you is the process, and then after I'll probably bring this map back, I would imagine, for another session of Map Maven to figure it out. Probably do it next week as well, with maybe more about the labeling as opposed to the actual building of the map. Getting in all of our actual the actual city labels and talking about how we'd design that. Let's carve this one down. That looks nice. That actually all looks pretty good. Let's just take that maybe that way. Slice that to more of a point. Don't want this one to be so tall. Again, if you make mistakes, you know, maybe that mountain's just shaped that way. Don't be judgmental. You don't know what that mountain's been through. You don't need to be so rude to the mountain that's just doing its best. Just gonna try and get rid of some of those weird little feathering effect we're getting on the side there. And again, we're never going to be this zoomed in on the map, so it doesn't need to be perfect, but I do want to get rid of some of the more egregious places it's happening. Right here. Right there. Now we zoom out, and that's going to look very nice over there. Now we've got our lovely little hillscape in the forest here. We've got our rivers. We got almost all of our natural, we've got our major natural landmarks. We don't have our vegetation in yet. So we're going to do that next. My eyes are burning today. Maybe it's because I put acid straight onto them. No, don't do that. Okay, I actually really love doing my forests because our lovely Star Raven built these beautiful tree blocks for us, which are absolutely great. So instead of having to place a bunch of individual tree things, you can just go, let's go ahead and go onto our forest layer. Where's our forest layer? Right here, like that. And of course, I did it with the eraser tool. Damn you, eraser tool. You can just go like this. And there you go. It's a bunch of trees all put together. So we're going to take this at the appropriate scale, which is great because you can also use this to indicate the size of the trees, right? So if it's a redwood forest, maybe you'd make them a little bit bigger to indicate that not only it's pine trees or however you like. So we've got, now this is a marsh looking thing. Let's see what we have here. What sizes are we looking at? So this is like a mixed tree. Ooh, that's going to be great for our marsh. So it's just like mixed shrubbery and some low plants. I feel like, let's look at the larger map to look at the area. So there's a forest here. These are pine. This is like a mixed tree forest. It's just sort of like a mixed wild looking wood. It's not predominantly a northern forest because Serendita is this, the whole region of Tarami that we're in is south of the equator on this planet. So everything farther north is going to be warmer. So it's actually pretty comparable here. I would say like it's not comparable. Pretty comfortably temperature wise. Like it gets a fair range of seasons. So I feel like this will probably just be, you know, it's not going to be like like a rainforest, and it's also not going to be very hardy northern trees that only exist near the timberline. So let's just do like a nice mixed one. Let's pick a tree block that is appropriate. So we've got all these. We've got pine, tree block. I think this is just our mixed tree blocks here. No, pine trees, marsh. What's this one? Okay. That one. Just gotta choose through them all. I'm looking for ones that maybe also have some mixed pines in, but I could also just mix the pines in myself. Just take the individual pine blocks. Oh, I'm losing it. There's a mixed tree block right here. Yeah. Yeah, see? Okay, great. So let's go ahead and take one of these. Just take mixed tree block 1. And let's make it what seems like a good size. Probably a little bit smaller. Let's take that to 2,000. Yeah, that's about on par with the size of these ones. So that seems like a good bet. Let's do our color overlay. We want it to be green. We want it to be multiply, so that actually makes it the right color. Yeah. Now we want to go through and essentially overlay this, filling in the area, and you want them interlocking like little puzzle pieces. So let's say, let's start down here because I get a sense that maybe these are a slightly different type because it's across this major river, so I feel like it'd be a different forest. Let's just go ahead and put this one right about there. See, it's going to overlap like that, which I don't like. Maybe we need to do slightly smaller trees just because we don't, it's going to be intersecting so many rivers. It won't look nice if they're all being cut off. Ah, that's better. Okay, so let's go ahead and do right there. We're going to go over a bit. Place another row of trees. Just keep interlocking them until you fill the area you want to fill. Let's go ahead and put them some down here. these kind of go all the way up into these hills down on the bottom of the map. I think I'll fill in those gaps with our individual tree tool. And then up here, I like it. Maybe it's more just like sparse trees through the marsh. Well, it is indicated as a forest. Let's go ahead and, first of all, get rid of that. Gotta pick the correct eraser tool. General brushes, soft round. There we go. Okay, so let's get rid of these guys that are on this side of the river because we don't want them encroaching on the other side. And then let's go ahead and grab another one of those tree blocks. Let's see, what kind do we want over there? Maybe, and it does look like it's all one forest. So maybe it's just the same kind of trees, but they're a little bit more sparse on this side. And maybe it's called a different forest because it's on the other side of the river, but it's really the same types of trees. So let's just go ahead and take the same tree block and fill in here. Let's go right. The first placement, I'm always getting so nervous like it makes a difference. It doesn't. It doesn't make a difference. Not really. And we want to go over the top of, like, we want to fill in more than we're actually going to need because we're going to go through and carve them out as we go. So let's go ahead and then we're going to take our eraser. A lot of the work you do on forests, in my opinion, is erasing the trees you don't need. So make that a little bit bigger. I don't need all these. I'm going to get rid of all of them. Goodbye, trees. Just a horrible devastation as thousands of trees are burned in a wildfire. That's what's happening right now. Okay, so we do have some trees going all the way up there. So actually, I do want to get rid of those. So let's just get rid of maybe these ones. Draw like a line here. Right there. Don't want that one. I'm going to get rid of all of those. But it does kind of fill that whole area just like that. So I like the idea of this. Maybe this one's a little bit trailing off. That's maybe where the road carves up along the side of it. So we'll leave it like that. Bring these ones down a little bit. A little bit more, less regular of a forest shape. Cool. Great. Okay, and then we're going to do the same thing on this side. Just getting rid of anything that's intersecting with the river, really. Which we're going to want to get a smaller brush for that in a second. And we're also going to want to get rid of this stuff because it just doesn't look good when it's overlapping on the mountains like that. So maybe we'll clear off these mountains entirely. And then we'll go back in with our individual mountain brush tool or individual forest like tree tool, and we'll get rid of those. So let's shrink this down so we can just go in and get rid of some of these ones that are weirdly intersecting the water. Like these ones just don't look right, that they're just sitting underneath the river like that. And we'll go clean up our borders. Just trimming, doing some trimming and gardening here. Make sure there's no weird little hanging bits that just look unattractive. The nice thing about these green lines is they kind of help fill in the space where the tree isn't. So even though there's not a tree on every exact border of your forest, you can feel that there's still like green extending out that way. Let's go over here. I'm gonna go in and we're gonna add and take away and just keep pruning and pruning until the map is looking how you want it to look. Let's get to that one because that one looks a little awkward. Those ones, absolutely, because they're growing across the river in an unnatural fashion. That one I think is fine. That one we gotta get rid of. Just going through. Trimming back trees that are causing us a problem. That one got a little clipped in a weird way. Okay, that's like the majority of those. So now we're going to go in and grab just one of these little individual trees. Which tree block, tree block. So I think these are actually a little bit higher up. Pine tree, tree 1. Let's take that up to, let's see what it looks like at 800 scale. Is that going to be the right size? No, it's much too big. Let's take that back down to like 400. Still too big. Maybe 200? Can I get 200? 200 looks great. Okay. So now I'm going to go in and just add these in a couple places that I feel like, gosh darn it, wouldn't you know it, I did it on the wrong tool. I just need to breathe and stay calm and not rip my freaking head off. Okay. It's fine. We're all having fun here. That's the thing about Photoshop, is there's little shortcuts that I just don't know, which I just haven't learned, and that's fine. But it, you know, it just makes sometimes working on it, you just have to have a little bit more patience. Oh, that one's intersecting weirdly, so we're definitely gonna have to get rid of that. Fill those in there. That one right there and there. Put one of the pine trees there. Then I'm going to go switch over to a pine tree, since we also have pine trees in this forest. Or, you know, not quite pine. Probably just some, like, you know, just some different types. Filling it in a bit. Adding things here and there. We're going to imply the forest continues up in here, obviously, but we're not going to see all of those trees. I'm going to grab a nice, like a couple chunkier pine trees, because that little one was like a little baby. Nice. That's a good one. Take that. Because I did say this side was denser, so we're going to go through and add in a decent amount more on this side. Just clumping in our trees until it starts feeling full. I think that looks pretty good. Don't know how many more I'd add. Let's go ahead and pick off a few of these that we incorrectly grabbed. We don't need that one there, because I think this river is really the hard line on where the forest ends. I do think we can get rid of a couple over here. Well, just because it's a little bit, well, no, actually I think it looks okay. I think it looks fine. I don't know if I want to change it. I think it's okay. So we'll take that. Let's zoom back out here. Okay, so we've got all this, and now we have a lot of extensive marshland that fills in sort of this whole area. So let's take a look at, yeah, I mean, all of this is very fertile, indicated as like high grasses, even on the bigger map. So it's enough of a landmark that on the bigger map, it would be noticeable. So we're going to definitely do that. And it should probably be a little bit more intense than just grassland. It is marshland. So let's go ahead and look at our marsh blocks. Let's go ahead and put that on our, let's call that marshland, mashland, no, marshland. And let's grab our, some of these marsh block. Gotta go down to the bottom. Swamp. Ooh, would swamp be more appropriate? I think swamp might be more appropriate, because that's like our low brush. Let's see what this one looks like. Yeah, I feel like that looks more like, it does look like marsh, I guess. I think we'll use a mix of these two. So we'll probably do some of this swamp block at scale 800. We'll do that, maybe definitely all in this area, and then up here maybe there's more grass, or over here there's more grassland, but I think everything in this immediate area would definitely be marsh. So let's go ahead and just start filling that in, and we're on the right level. So we're going to fill that in. I think everything here is going to be marshland. So let's start from, I guess that's as far over as we're going. So let's just start here. I might turn off. Just place all these in. It doesn't matter if we overlap with our forest because they are on different levels, and we can adjust that as we go. We can chisel and cut as we need. I try to stay on the same block tool as I go because they don't, if you use different block tools, they don't tessellate together as well, which, you know, they just start getting a little wonky if you're trying to fit them all together. Now, some of these areas are also going to be the urban centers, so there wouldn't even, we'll probably end up removing a lot more of this as we go, because they'd probably clear out a decent amount of the marsh so they could put in buildings and all that sort of stuff. I think down here there'd just be like a decent little bit around the end of that one. Yeah, I think that's good. I really think the marshland probably dies off the farther it gets. Let's say that would probably have one right here too. Okay, I think that's good to be going on now. Now this white is sort of tripping me out, so I might change that. I mean, it's not going to be white in the official version anyway, but let's go in with our eraser now. Just start getting rid of some stuff that we don't need. We don't need it there. I don't think it's going to be on this island, any of these islands, because this is going to be where the majority of the city is. Go ahead and get rid of that. We can also get rid of any of it that's overlapping with our forest because we know we already have our forest there. Yeah. Maybe this doesn't quite cut over this river in the same way, so maybe it's a little bit more contained. Get rid of it up here too. Nice. Okay. Here's a little start on that. I really think all of these areas are going to be cities. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that. I'm going to take that off. I think it's almost like they use the rivers. Maybe they use rivers not necessarily as defensive areas, but just like natural borders to the areas that they live in. So let's go ahead and also take a second here, and I want to drop on my hex. So I feel like for a small city, it should take, let me see what we said. I'm trying to think about walking distance. So this one, these two centers of the city, which are separated and people often like ferry across the lake here. These ones are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's about 5 miles across, which is only going to take your players a little bit like close to maybe 2 to 3 hours to cross, depending on how densely populated and convoluted the city is. And that was a big town. So that's a sort of place that's got a population of, you know, it's not going to have every amenity. This is a small city, so it's going to have probably at least one of every guild type, that sort of thing. So I think they're going to have a lot more population spread. So, I mean, this already is like, each of these is probably about the size of one part of that other town. So I like the idea of, I think definitely all these are cleared off, and that might be the main part of the city. And then maybe some of this area is also cleared off. Just because it's like near that main thoroughfare, it's near the road. But like down here, maybe it's not quite so populated. Well, there might be like a port here making its way south, but honestly, the stuff near the road is going to be the most heavily populated because that's where the access point is. So let's say this is also cleared off. I kind of like the idea of this also being a populated area, even though it's a little bit separate. I think that would be cool. And then maybe down here too. And then I feel like there'd be something here. Maybe this central one or one of these two is cleared off. I like that. That's a decent sized city too. I mean, this is pretty big, but we're talking like some of these, like this is maybe just cleared and it's like where the hunting is. Like there's like a hunter's guild or, you know, foraging. Somebody, you know, that's where like a base of rangers is that will like head out and do things into the forest. You know, actually let's drop that back on because I feel like that could maybe be here. And I think we're starting to get a little too spread out and I don't want this urban center to be so spread out. It doesn't make sense that it would function all as a unit. So I'm trying to look at the waterways we naturally have built in. We have a couple like islands here. I think that makes sense. Just those areas. So I think I'm going to leave it like that. I'm going to go in and clean up some of these borders here in our swamps, which is a little, you know, it's our tedious part of the job, just cleaning those up so they're not intersecting with the rivers weirdly, which it doesn't matter as much as it did with the trees because these shapes are a little bit more amorphous. There's just like little spits of grass and such. So if it intersects with the water, it's less, it doesn't look as odd as when like a clear shape of a pine tree is growing across the middle of a river. But we'll get rid of some of the more egregious ones. This one, we don't quite need that. That looks okay. That all looks okay. Just going around our borders here. That one, get rid of that one. Maybe make this a little bit smaller so I'm not clipping into the nearby shapes as much. Okay. That looks a little odd. Just going through and removing all these strange little plants that are causing such an irrigation issue because they're all grown up on everything. Let's get rid of that. Okay, back up this way. Shape looks a little bit angular. Moving on up. Getting rid of all of these. So I'll tell you a little bit about the lore of this area. So Serendita, the country that we are currently designing this regional map for, is a halfling majority country. And it is considered to be like the land of luck by most people in the area. Like halflings literally have a lucky feat in D&D, and that's kind of a nod to that, where halflings are so lucky that this high concentration of halflings that have founded this like historical base and like home area, it's the land itself is considered to be very lucky, and there's a lot of weird turns of chance. People rely a lot on superstition because they've seen it come true many a times. The tall tales and odd feats of luck just happened to work out. Carrying a clover in your pocket actually does have a benefit. You know, it changes the outcome. It could take a very risky journey, and all of a sudden all of the bandits miss you and your crop turns around. So that was the concept for Serendita as a nation. I also thought it would be funny if one thing I really like doing when I'm building lore of different regions or different countries is looking through lists of weird governmental systems, right? Because there's not just democracy or oligarchy or any of those. There's a lot of really weird government systems out there, and I love kind of scanning through those lists and picking out some ones that are really interesting. One that I found that I thought would be a weird concept is a theoretical government system called I think it's called kakistocracy or something like that, and it literally means like government of the worst, and it means the people who are the least suited to the positions of power are the ones who are put in them. And I just thought that was funny, and it's theoretical because obviously nobody intentionally builds a government with that system, but it's more of like a joking term. I think it was established in some political articles that were written making fun of, you know, different choices the governments were making and saying like, you know, it's also sometimes called a banana republic, meaning like it's just an absolute mess of a place. It's run by a bunch of like loose cannons who don't know what they're doing. So I thought it would be funny if maybe Serendita runs on a little bit of a kakistocracy where they just always, but not unintentionally, a little bit intentionally, where over time they've realized that they tend to do better with people who trip and fall into fortunate solutions than people who are actually capable and know what they're doing, because it is a land of luck. And if you don't know what you're doing and just happen to keep getting lucky, that happens so much here that those people actually fare better than somebody who has absolutely no clue at or who knows exactly what they're doing and is trying to actually do things well. So I thought that was a funny concept. Let's go to multiply. Ooh, so now that's showing up as the correct color. Let's go ahead and get rid of our background layer. Yeah, look at that. That looks pretty nice. I think we'll change the color of it because for me that feels a little bit more grassy, like rolling plains grassy. So I think I'll take that and make that a little bit more green. Maybe like a very dark green so it doesn't quite match the, I don't want it to match the trees. Let's push it a little bit more this way. Make it look really mossy. Yeah, that looks nice. Almost looks frog, like a nice toad green. And I think I'll even push the trees a little bit. No, I think that's actually right. Oh, what happened here? Why didn't you keep what I had? Nice, okay. Yeah, that looks good. I'm gonna go ahead and create a new layer to add in our grassland because all of this area is very grassy, marshy, so we want to have stuff extending out from here that is still that. Let's go ahead and add back in our down to the bottom, this guy. So we can see, so yeah, we want this pretty much all filled in with like general grassland. So let's go ahead and get our grassland block and keep filling that in. Are we on our, no, we're on the eraser tool, but I caught it that time. Yay. Okay, let's go, and we don't want, I think we actually are gonna use, ironically, the marsh block now. Let's take that down to a little bit smaller. Let's take that to 800. Nice. Okay. And then we're going to use that and we're just going to go in and fill in the rest of this stuff. So what's nice about this is that's going to fill in, like pair really nicely with our swamp blocks we were using, because it looks like a very natural transition between the two because they both have those grass patches in them. There we go. Filling that in. Put one here, there, and then we're going to build out from here as well. Again, it doesn't matter if we're overlapping because we can get rid of them because they're on separate layers. Just always make sure you're on a separate layer or you're going to be in a world of hurt. And this is going to actually extend up into here, though we're going to make it more sparse up here because it's getting into that area which has some dominant salt flats, so the ground is not great for growing in that area. Let's go there, up. Just plopping these in. Oop. This map is very much coming together as we go. And then we're going to go through and we're going to erase all of our overlapping bits of greenery that we don't need. Let's take a slightly larger eraser. Well, actually, first things first, let's go ahead and add the color overlay because there's some places that it might be okay to let it continue overlaying. Take that back down to more of a yellow. Because I feel like grass is like a nice wheat. Too green. Just keep messing with that color until you like it. That's a little bit too yellow. Maybe we take it more to like an orange. Like that. Why did it go away? Because I didn't hit OK. Sometimes I assume it's going to apply and it really doesn't want to. It really wants me to follow the process correctly. I just want it to work quickly. That's nice. Okay, and then okay again. There we are. Okay. Let's retitle this grassland so we remember what it is. And then let's go through and start erasing. Just scourging and purging all this grass. Okay. I'll try and stay zoomed out because there's so much of it. Let's make that a little bit bigger so it goes faster for us. So you don't want it within the trees, but it can definitely overlap with them a little bit. We'll just have to figure that out as we go. I think they definitely cut off before the river because it's a nice little natural border we've established. Same thing over here. There we go. Cutting over here. We'll zoom in a bit. I think sometimes on Photoshop it's good to stay zoomed out because it helps you not over noodle in areas that you really don't need to be futzing with. Okay, now let me zoom in and actually be a little bit more specific. That actually looks pretty good all there. A little bit of overlap there. This map is really coming together. I'm very happy with the way it's working out. See, I think like that overlap is okay. Because there's not a hard border between between this grassland and like the heavier marsh. They would kind of overlap. My eyes are watering today. I don't know why. I wasn't doing anything. It's not like I was actually off of my computer most of the day. Crying. I'm just getting so emotional about my beautiful little map we've made. Okay. Let's zoom on up, zoom on up. Okay. A little bit of hanging over here. We don't want this. This one, honestly, I'm probably not even going to mess with the stuff because it's just this grass and it doesn't really bother me when it's overlapping the rivers like that. So I really just want to make sure it's not overlapping strangely with the vegetation we've already put in there. Which it seems like it's doing all right so far. Maybe get rid of this stuff. Gotta shrink that brush down a little bit because it wouldn't grow through the actual tree. And zooming on over. That looks all right. Yeah. That one looks a little odd. There we go. Great. Honestly, I think that's pretty good for all that. Wow, look how absolutely fertile this land looks. There's so much going on here. This land has so much plant life. I love it. I really do. I grew up in Florida for a long time, and this really makes me think of like the Everglades. Just so much greenery everywhere, and I feel like that's really what this would look like. Well, I think that is enough for like our biggest, like, I think that's most of our natural things right now. So, oh, well, one thing I was going to do is I'm going to thin it out up here because I feel like because this is a salt flat, there just wouldn't be as much grass. It'd be very sparse because the ground is salted, so it won't grow as well. So I'll just go ahead and go through and take out some of these. Just make it a little bit thinner and thinner and thinner. And take out the stuff that's overlapping our mountain, our little hills, weirdly. I feel like it's really just about right about this hill line that they would start getting thin, because that is our salt flats where they start. So let's go ahead and really get rid of everything north of that. Just fiddling until it feels about right. Get rid of the other one. There we go, get rid of that one. I feel like that's looking pretty good. I might go through and clean up some of these little bits of grass that are hanging on. Like there. Yeah. That is pretty much that, I would say, on getting that grass thinned out. Because now it just looks like little brambles and such that's living up in that area. And then let's go ahead and take... Okay, so we've got all our natural landmarks in. We're going to take a look at getting in these basic city landmarks. So the first thing we're actually going to do is our roads, which I've already got a thing pre-built here for roads. Let's put so this is all the city symbols from the other map. So we're just going to go ahead and erase all that. Let's get a bigger eraser. We're not going to need any of those roads. They don't make sense. Towns. Oh, that's our urban area, so we want to get rid of that. Okay, now let's look at our roads, and we're going to have to put back on our other map because we got this big road here, and we want to trace that pretty clearly. So let's go ahead and get our hard round. We don't want our eraser brush, we want our paintbrush. Let's just go ahead and grab our hard round here and go to this one. Now, how wide do we want that to be? Let's compare to our other map. So on this map, that's about the right size. Let's make it maybe there. That seems right. And we'll just go ahead and lay this in. And then we're going to have to go through and erase some of our foliage that's overlapping it, because that'll look weird, just like when it's overlapping on water. We don't want that. The thing with roads is you want to be confident. And get a little bit more subtlety to the shape of the road. There we go. Let's go, keep on passing through here, cross that way. Okay. Oop, messed up a little bit there. There's like a big bridge crossing there. Get an eraser in here. Because we don't want it to overlap with our river. That makes absolutely no sense. Well, I guess it could be like a built-up bridge. Oh, you know, it'd be nice if this town had was like in Florence, Italy, where they have like the whole shopping center on top of the main river running through the city. That would be cool. I feel like they definitely have something like that here. Don't like how that road ended up looking down there, but we'll fix that later. So there's our main big road that's running through the city. Now let's take a look back at these maps and compare it also to our big old map here. So this obviously doesn't indicate all the roads, but it does indicate the roads that lead in and out of town. So there's no other road that leads out of this area, out of Lakeland. There's nothing heading up this way or anything like that. Okay. So there will be smaller city roads. Before I get to that though, I actually want to go and take our urban areas and let's actually go to color overlay real quick and take it to multiply. So it's the right color. And then I'm going to paint in with the soft brush the areas that would be really densely populated. Okay, urban areas. So let's go ahead, make it softer, make it bigger, and we'll just blotch this in for now. So we know we want all of this to be populated. This is all our heavily populated areas, and I'm actually going to drop this. I want this down below my lakes and such. So I wonder if I can just take this and move it underneath our natural lands, because I don't like the natural lands being underneath it. I want the roads on top of the natural lands, but I'll do that. I'll fix that later. Right, that looks better. And then I'll have to futz with this. I think the order of the layers leave a little bit of wanting. That looks pretty good. Okay, and then back to urban area. Let's start filling in. I know we wanted all this area by the main road. These are all something worth labeling as like populated. All of this area by the river, by that main road out would be filled. Like the idea of those having some settlements on them. Yeah. So that area in white is going to be the majority of our actual metropolitan area, which I think is pretty cool. I like the idea of you come into this first city, and that really starts to take a shape now, doesn't it? Let's go ahead and change color overlay to multiply, because I like that nice red color. Yeah, that honestly already is pretty nice looking in my eyes. Like, there's a lot more to be done here, obviously, but let's go ahead and take off that background so we can kind of see what it's looking like. So this is now, oh, look how cool that looks. It really does look like this cool urban area right in the middle here. And we can clean up around the rivers because we know we don't want it spilling over. Oop, got a little bit of, I'll fix that later, but we got a little bit of that there. We can get rid of the bleed over that river because we know we want, while there might be buildings over here, we don't want there to be like a dense urban area on that side of the river. So let's do this. Let's go get an eraser. We do want that to be a hard eraser. And we're just gonna carefully trace that away. Cleaning it up, cleaning it up. And I think there wouldn't really be any here either. Ooh, definitely got to do some cleanup on some of these rivers. But that's a job for as we go. We don't need to do that right this very second. That's so nice looking. I like that a lot. Yeah, that's pretty cleaned up. So that's going to be like the major urban center. Now, one thing I'm going to do with this map that I did not do on the other map is because it's such a large city, I think one thing I'm going to do is actually, I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this layer and let's call it urban area. Let's call it wealthy for right now. Just like wealthy area of town. And then we're going to say, just because I haven't quite decided all the areas I need yet, I'm going to go ahead and create just some stand-in ones. So there's a wealthy area, a poor area, because that's the first thing that's jumping to my mind. Let's go ahead and say industry. There's like an industrial area. And then, yeah, that seems like a good start. So what we're going to do with this actually is I'm going to get rid of that layer. We're not actually going to end up using too much of that. And then we're going to take our eraser and let's say, what do we want to be the wealthy area? Let's say like some of these central islands are really wealthy. So let's take, we haven't quite decided, but we'll say like this is definitely a wealthy area. And I think, let's say the poor areas are definitely going to be on the outskirts of town. They're not quite as up in the middle of it. Let's actually take this whole area and let's cross that off. I think this is going to be it. Let's get rid of those so we can actually see what we're saying here. So I don't think all of this would be wealthy. That doesn't really make sense. This is like a nice one on the main road. So I feel like that would probably be... Now, and what we'd usually do probably is do different boroughs. So I could even go as far as saying every single one of these islands is a different color. And each one has like a different distinct borough name, and I could get really specific about what it is. But right now we're just going to go with something basic to show how this will look. So we're going to say that's our wealthy areas, is these ones in red. Let's actually change it to something so we can remember it more. Let's go ahead and let's make it purple. We all know the purple royalty mix. So we'll go ahead and make that like a nice rich purple color. And then it looks a little pink, but that's fine. Then we're going to do our poor areas. Let's go ahead and erase these first because we know that that's our wealthy area. So I'll erase these islands. And I think I like the idea of these areas being sort of like the ones that are a little bit farther on the outskirts. And then maybe also this entry area. I don't know. We're making it make sense. We're just making choices for the sake of making the map look like something today. I like the idea of maybe these central ones are like, this is where the bulk of the work gets done. So these are going to be our industrial centers. So we're going to clean these off. Nice. And then I think this is, that's a trade area too. So let's say that's like our poor areas of town for the sake of what we're calling them today. We could say it's something else. We could say it's, you know what, actually, let's change it to something else. Let's say it's like, these are our, let's make this like a bright orange. I like the idea. These are not necessarily, but maybe like, which is not the case really for like how I'm designing the city. But let's say that these areas are not poor. Let's say that they're, maybe like there's universities. So academic. So there's like a lot of universities here, and these are all our academic regions. But they're all on the outskirts because maybe they're studying arcane craft that could be a little dangerous if it was like right in the midst of the city. And then we'll go ahead and do our industrial blocks, and we're going to go ahead and erase everything we've already used. So we know this is academic area. And again, I might be more, and maybe it's not so much about what they do there. Obviously, it could be more of, oh, well, if this is New York, we could say like, well, we could color each area that we want to be Queens, or we want to be whatever given area in the city, and just name them, and we'll just essentially color code the map. When we maybe put like a little key over here that says like green equals whatever. Let's go ahead and I think that's pretty much that whole area. So let's just go ahead and change the color overlay, and let's keep this one. Let's just make it a nicer, like a brighter red. So it's more distinct from that purple we have. Yeah. So now we have not only our city, but we have started to break it up into the different regions of town. One thing I didn't do on this map that I would actually be interested on doing on this map is going through and using Star Raven's tools for different buildings they have. So they do have some nice, where are they? Further down. Town. So they have some nice little structures here that could be fun to put. So let's say that this is in the way that we talked about with Disney having like the big icons of the palace. Let's say that there is like a big university here. So we're going to put like that. Ooh, we need to put it on a different layer. We have to put it on our city icons layer. So we're going to put it here. We want it on top of our natural landmarks right there. And then we could have like a nice, the nice like major landmarks there showing up. Maybe there's a cool tower somewhere. Ooh, this is a castle. This is like a nice stronghold castle that's there, indicating some of the, the major reasons. Since this is a larger town, there probably would be a couple important like town centers that would be nice to mark here, so that our people have a little bit more wherewithal as we're moving. Now, the one thing I know we're missing today is labels. We're not going to do too much about labels today, but I think I am going to mess a little bit around on the roads, and I'll show you how I do my labels. So just to finish off what we were doing with the roads, because clearly there's not just going to be this one major roadway. Now, maybe they do a boat path, so they're not going to have, they're not going to have roads everywhere. So maybe for here, this is the only like major road that cuts through the whole city, but there probably would be, let's go ahead and take this down to, the other road was at 30. So let's put this one at 20. And I feel like there'd be a couple roads connecting, from here. There's a road that goes this way, across that channel, and that runs maybe to the center of this island. There's maybe a road that runs from like this big castle over to this part of the island and then up, because maybe there's a port here. So let's say these roads probably run down to this port, and then there's a little ferry crossing. There'd probably be one here that goes down to the river, and then maybe here. Yeah. Just to indicate that there's like easy ways to make your way through the city. That'd be a big intersection there. And there's one there too. We'll zoom out. Yeah, that's starting to show a little bit of logic. There'd be roads running to each of the major ferries that run across the river. And then we could also add on, we can go and duplicate this layer, and let's call this ferries. And then we're going to, we can also go ahead and let's use a different tool. Let's use one of our dots, I think, because lovely Star Raven went through and made all these great dot textures for us. And we'll indicate where the ferry crossings are. So we know we've got one here, and then one here. And we can even do some more complicated ones, because there'd probably be one that leads directly from here up to this island, because this is a water-based city. So they're going to have a bunch of different ferry crossings, and we can go through and get really specific about that. There'd probably be ferries that cross here in addition to the roads at these major junctures, because some people, I'm sure there's plenty of people who live in this town who don't even have a cart or horse. All they have is whatever boat they usually use. So why would they want to take the road if they don't have to? Yeah, so that's cool. Just adding in some of those, and maybe some of these more outlying ones, they don't have a road at all, but they only have the ferry that leads there. So the only way to get there is by boat. And we could change up the color on those, but for the sake of today, I quite like that color as it is. I like the idea of maybe there's like a ferry that runs between those two. This one also has a path that leads down to here. Yeah. And you can just keep futzing and adding as you're world building. But I'll probably end up keeping something like that where there's a ferry that runs between all these islands. So you'd have all this, you'd have your roads, you'd keep layering that in. Now there's probably also some roads that run out of town as well. So like there most likely would be some sort of road that somebody has built running into the forest, or maybe because they have so much more experience with water, they just use those rivers. So like this river here in the forest is a major thoroughfare. So I think that would make sense too. Yeah, so let's just take a look at like how we would add on some labels here. So labels can get a little bit, there can be a lot of labels. Okay, so here's our label tab from the other one. We're obviously not going to need all these because these are all labels we had for the other map, but we can go through and just, you know, type on them and add stuff as we need. So I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of these for now. I'm just going to go ahead and delete them. Delete. Yes. Okay, so now we just have this one. And let's just call this academic. You know, this would probably be where we name some of the islands, the different regions. We'd copy and paste a couple of those. We'd also use this to name our roads. Where's our duplicate button? Duplicate. There we go. This is called the Crusted Road that runs from the north. So we've duplicated it. Let's move it up here. Take it. Control, free transform, which is just Control F. I'm going to turn it so it kind of lays along the road a little bit. Yeah, so that road is labeled, and we go through and label. I don't label my smaller roads. That's a lot of names. I don't think we need it. I would just say the crossroads, but I name my major roads. I would go through and name any rivers I think were necessary, which would be, that would be under, oh, this is our nice big label, so we'll do this. Ooh, fonts are missing. Cancel. We're not going to mess with it. Oh, manage. But I uploaded Apple Chancery. Well, for now, we're just going to leave it saying Willetshire because my little font didn't want to work. But we'll put this somewhere it looks nice on the map. Probably up here because there's a nice gap in this area, whereas there, or maybe down this way. We'll put it there for now. And then we'd change that to say Lakeland. And then we might also put a label. Well, if we put like the Lakeland one up here, we might say Clover, 20 miles, and then a little arrow indicating off the map which way it goes, which would be nice. Would be good for your players to see. Let's see, what else do we have? What other roads and labels can we do? So that's our city labels. That's the major label. We'd use this for like our roads and town, or roads and town icons. Natural labels. Where? Oh, so this is river labels. And then we also have all of our these. So let me go ahead and do some river labeling. So these also have a custom build on them. One thing I do for these, where is this? Ah, that's not what I wanted to do. Trying to see one of them I can see, because I think a lot of them are underneath parts of the map. Okay, so we got this one up here. So let's zoom in. We'd move this on top. Obviously, we don't want our labels underneath our landmarks. So we put it up here. And let's, you know, we're going to take that. We'll just keep that name for now. But let's say this is instead of a name of a river, we're going to have this be the name of a lake, of the lake. So we're going to take this. We're going to make it a little bit bigger. Let's make it 24. And I want to free transform it. Ah, that's not what I wanted. Command F. Why? I think I had the wrong thing. I don't know why that keeps... Oh, I think I know why. I'm hitting the wrong thing. I need to be hitting Alt F. Or or something. I'll figure it out later. But we're gonna do a edit, free transform. Oh, Control T, that's what I did wrong. We're gonna turn it this way. So it's maybe filling up more of that lake. And then you can also, with these, you can go in and change the shape of them, which is great for rivers, where you can take it and bend it so it actually fits the arc of the river, which I think is really a nice little effect that you can take the second to do. And then we also have, our mountains or our forests. So let's take this one. I use the same kind of label for mountains and forests because I think it just looks nice. I don't like having too many different styles. It gets a little bit complicated. But I would take this, and let's just leave the name as is for now. But I would twist it so it's covering a nice amount of the river. Another thing with natural labels that helps them stick out from your society labels is having them be at angles, because I feel like most society labels are just going to be square to the map, whereas the things that are labeling natural landmarks are going to curve and fit the shape of the natural landmark, which will make it look a little bit more natural. Yeah, so I'd go through and I'd name the different forests. I'd name if there's any significant peaks or anything like that. Yeah, and that's kind of what I do for all that. And I think that's how I'd go about on my labels, which there's a lot of choices to still be made on that front. So I'm not going to get into all that today because we just don't have time. But this is definitely a really nice base that we're working with. And we made this in just under, we're coming up on 2.5 hours right now of making all this. And now, obviously, there's some reasons that helped me do that a lot faster. I had already designed the overall shape of the area in my larger map, but a good way to look at that is if you have a larger map you work with, go ahead and start doing that. It will help you out. One thing I actually used to build this larger map, which is actually more clear. Let me go ahead and save this because we've been living dangerously and not saving anything. Is I take naturally occurring shapes, like to build the map I have. Let me open it so you can see. I built that map using ancient maps of the world. So old cartographers, like real world cartographers, had built maps of our world that obviously were flawed in some ways because they didn't have all the information yet. And they went through and built these different odd shapes, and I sort of just took them and I mashed them together into little Frankenstein continents. And then I took those and I filled them in with like a solid base color and then started manipulating the shape. I think maybe on the next stream what I'd do is maybe show you how I'd build up one of these grander scale maps. I wouldn't be building it for anything official because I already have this one. I don't need to build another one. But I would show you how I built this up with the different effects and layers and how it's actually, I know this map looks pretty detailed. It looks very naturalistic, that I made a lot of choices about the shapes of the land, but really a lot of this I found by pulling some ancient map of the real world and then just manipulating it in different ways and putting it together. And you can do that too. Like you can kind of see here, this part of the map used to be like Spain and Italy on one of those ancient maps I found. I think this was also a different version of Italy up here. And then I would also I took the maps and I'd invert like the water into being the continent or the continent into being the water, just to make them unrecognizable. And that gave me some really nice natural shapes to play with because obviously those were based on the natural shapes of our coastlines. So I thought that was a cool way to go about it, but I'm sure you could do that with any number of different shapes that you might find fun to use. Like you could take the shape of a map, like go on Google Maps and just look for interesting shaped river or interesting shaped like lakes or interesting shaped islands, and you could just make that the shape of your continent because it's got a natural coastline occurring, and you could take a screenshot of that and then port it into Photoshop and start manipulating it until it looks like a nice map shape. Because that's basically what I did for all this. Basically what I did after talking about all these crazy different weird techniques I used for the last 2.5 hours. But basically it's just taking screenshots and adding a couple fancy effects on them. But yeah, so that's my little Photoshop map making tutorial for the day. I'm really happy with how this turned out, actually. I think this is going to be a really fun city for these people the people in my games to explore, especially compared to, I do not want to save those changes, but I do want to reopen the village map so we can see kind of like a comparison to that one. It's taking a second to load. Spilled a little water. So this one's complete. So this is what the complete one will look like. It'll have all of the labels on there. Oop. Let's bring this one down here. That's our complete one. Let's actually do a little side by side. Oop. 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 I don't want that. Okay. And then let's bring this over here so we can kind of compare side by side how they look. Okay. So this is the completed one for the Village Shire, the small town. Yeah, this definitely feels like more of a complex city. Oh, we can definitely add on our 10-mile hex. So we can, or our 10-mile hex, so we can see that scale represented. Oh, that's on this one. So we need to click onto this one. Go down here. 10-mile hex. There we go. Yeah, so you can see that this area, it just definitely feels like a more complex urban space. Whereas this seems like, oh, it's like a pretty sizable town, but it's not doing anything too complicated. This is my Phandelver or Phandalin from like Lost Mines of Phandelver. It's a starting town. There's a little bit of resources there. There's some guilds. They don't have everything. There's nobody. And really the purpose of a small town like this, even though a big city is a lot of fun, the reason I think small towns are so valuable in D&D, especially at low level, is it makes sense that your bumbling idiots of a D&D party are the most powerful, capable people in the area, possibly, because it's a small town. Like, people might know the area better. There are obviously like very adept people that live there, but they might be so specialized or so occupied with what they have to manage for the town because they're the only cleric in the town that they might be too valuable for. So the idea of them like leaving town to try and solve some mystery up in the mountains, unthinkable, because they're the only cleric in the area. It's much better to have this random party of level 2 rangers and rogues try and figure it out. Nobody knows them, and also, you know, they're available, frankly. And I think it makes a lot of sense, because I sometimes struggle with that, with a suspension of disbelief of, well, why are we the ones who are in charge? And I think that's important for scaling why your party is the one who's being called on to undertake all these tasks. And it might be because, hey, you guys might not be that powerful, but this is an isolated area. You guys are the only ones who are trained enough, who know what's going on. So I love a small town to start in, even though there are perfectly great campaigns that take place entirely within the bounds of a major city. I like a small town to start. It also just feels like a really cozy place for your characters to kind of start getting to know each other and figuring out how you work as a group. And also, if some devastating mistake happens, it's not going to ruin the entire ecosystem of your world. So yeah, I like it. But here we go. This is the beginning of a map from Lakeland. I will probably, if I have time, keep working on this either during the next stream or a little bit between streams to get it cleaned up, probably get my thoughts together in order on it. And then I'll definitely show you guys the final results if I don't end up just finishing it on the next stream. And the next stream will probably also take a look at how I build those larger world maps, even though I won't go to the detail of building like a whole one, because it's a lot of work to build the whole one. But I can show you just like some of the effects I mess with. But I think that's where we're going to leave it for today. We've spent a lot of time exploring what it looks like in world building, taking a look at Photoshop, playing around with the tools in there that are at your disposal for making really cool, fun maps. And the thing I encourage you to do is, if you have ever considered using Photoshop and are too scared because you don't know too much about it, you're not trained in it, that's okay. Just go in. It's not that complicated. Get a nice brush set. Star Raven on DeviantArt that says theirs. It's absolutely, I love it. But there's many more out there. If you look up cartography brushes for Photoshop, or cartography like stamp tools, you'll find dozens of assets out there. Some that are for free, some that you can pay for. But there's a lot of different options, and they can make your maps look very cool and unique because they'll all have that same cohesive calligraphy set that you use. Yeah, so if you want to give it a shot, give it a shot. If not, that's okay, because everyone has to DM their own way, and not everyone should have the same exact maps or the same style, because you should do what you find fun. But you know what? This is what I find fun, and I love getting to share it with all of you. So I think that's all we have for today, and thank you guys so much for going on this little map making journey with me. I look forward to seeing you next week back here at the same time, or also join us for Ravenloft Misfits, which is typically on Monday evenings from about 7:30 to 10:30, 11, depending on how dramatic we're being that evening. But I believe we are actually off next week. But come join us on our social platforms. We have Talking XP. If you look up Talking XP on Twitter, you can find us there. You can also find me on Twitter at Ellen Boner. So that's where you can find me and follow me. So thank you all for joining me this week. I hope you all have a great rest of your week. And I think that's about it. So I hope you guys have a great rest of your week. And always remember to bring a map so you don't get lost. Goodbye, everybody. Bye.